Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's another beautiful day at Google, and I'd like to welcome you to another exciting Authors at Google talk. Today, we have the distinct honor of welcoming Dr. Phil Zimbardo and Dr. John Boyd, who are speaking to us today about their latest book, which is entitled The Time Paradox. It covers basically how your perception of time impacts your psychology, your relationships, pretty much your whole life. You know, time is something that we always think of, especially being here at Google. And, Albert Einstein even commented about how 5 minutes passes differently, whether you're, next to someone you like or you have your hand on the stove. So it's really a trend throughout time. And we're really pleased to have Dr. Zimbardo and Dr. Boyd here to talk to us today. Just to give you a quick background, John Boyd is actually a fellow Googler. So we're pleased, as always, to have a Google author on our Authors at Google channel. He is a research manager here. He studied his dissertation under Dr. Zimbardo, and he was instrumental in constructing the Zimbardo Time Perspective Inventory, the ZTPI, which is one of the key tools in this field of psychology. And he was also the first to identify the transcendental future time perspective. And Dr. Zimbardo is perhaps one of the most well-known and famous psychologists of all time. We're very pleased that he joined us here today. I don't know if we have the Stanford alumni in the audience, but many of you probably remember his simply awesome class. And he's currently a professor emeritus at Stanford, and he is the past president of the American Psychological Association. And currently, his work focuses on his direction of the Stanford Center on Interdisciplinary Policy, Education, and Research on Terrorism, which builds out of his work on the psychology of evil and the Lucifer effect. His research spans, as I mentioned, the psychology of evil to shyness, madness, even hypnosis. So a little bit of everything in addition to our focus today on time. I could go on and talk about his videos, his textbooks, his contributions he made to the field, but I wanted to close with a quote that he made upon ascending to the presidency of the American Psychological Association. He stated as one of his goals was to make our research and clinical contributions to society more highly visible, to increase the positive image of psychology in the media, and to make us all proud to be psychologists in one of the most challenging and dynamic of all professions. Dr. Zimbardo and Dr. Boyd have done wonders for the world of psychology in terms of popularizing it to a general audience, and we're really pleased to have them speak to us today. At the end of our talk, we'll have time for questions and answers. Please use the mic for the benefit of our YouTube and virtual audiences. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Zimbardo.
This book sign. This book sign. You're welcome.
Right, start the clock, please. 30 seconds, studio. Keep it quiet, please. Settle down.
It's about time. End sequence. Take one.
15 seconds, studio. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
So today, John and I are going to talk about how time perspectives govern our lives, your life and my life. Time perspective, a simple definition is, it's the study of how we divide the flow of our personal experience into temporal categories, that we partition the experience. Right now, you're in the immediate moment. When Cliff was giving the introduction, that's the past. Your sense of what you're going to do when this is over is the future. The problem is that these different time frames we construct automatically without thinking. These time frames vary between social classes, between cultures, between individuals. And the main point that we've come up with is they become biased in the sense that without your awareness, you overuse some of these and you underuse others. And we'll see what that means in a minute. We argue that time perspective is one of the most powerful influences on all of human behavior and also the destiny of nations. In our book, The Time Paradox, we present a number of paradoxes which I'm going to talk to you about today. One of them is that here's this thing we argue influences everything you do, and yet you're unaware of it. Not only are ordinary people unaware of it, but psychologists have rarely studied this. You won't see this topic in the index of any introductory psychology text. So we fail to appreciate not only its significance, but the important role it plays in our lives. And my goal today is to try to persuade you that it is important, that you should be aware of it, and you should do something about it. So every day your life is filled with many decisions. Should you work or play? Should you study or go out with friends? Should you eat more pasta or stick to your diet? Should you drink more wine before driving? Should you enjoy that extra sweet even though you know you're diabetic? Should you have sex now or wait till you're married? Should you practice safe sex or just do it? Should you smoke more now and risk cancer later? Should you give in to temptation or delay gratification? And so these are themes you put in different content that govern our lives, that govern our decisions. The giving into temptation versus delay gratification is a central theme in certainly in a lot of Catholic and Protestant religious theme. So how does your time perspective influence these and other decisions you make? So the model we've developed is you have to make a decision. Any one of those, anything that's important in your life, what are the influences on that decision? For some people, and now all decisions are in the now, in the moment, and we're going to assume when you make that decision, you're going to take an action. For some people, the main influence is things in the immediate situation. What does it smell like? What does it taste like? What does it look like? What is your biology telling you? What are the other people around? The social, what are they saying? Do it, go for it. Those people, we're going to call present-oriented. If most of your decisions are limited to that set of influences in the immediate situation, we're going to call you present-oriented. For other people making the same decision, they focus on the past. When have I been in this situation before? They're evoking memories of the past. And if that tends to be the way in which they deal with most decision-making situations, we'll call them past-oriented. For others, the past is irrelevant, the present's irrelevant. They are focused on anticipated consequence. They are focused on the future. We're going to call them future-oriented. Now, the past and future are similar in one way. They are abstractions. They do not exist except we create them in our minds. The present has some empirical reality. Now, I'm going to talk about these as if they were different types. Past-oriented people, present-oriented, future-oriented. But in fact, it's a continuum. On the scale I'm going to talk about, you get scores on each. So you're high, very high, moderately high, or low on any of these three dimensions. So I'm saying, although I'm going to talk about it as if it were a type, they really are a profile of degrees of being present, past, or future-oriented. I want to start with a wonderful little demonstration I just did. We're going to get preschool kids and tempt them. And we're going to put them in an emotional cognitive dilemma. They win a prize, and they can have the prize now, one treat, but if they wait a little while, they can have two. So is a bird in the hand worth two in the bush, or does it not make sense to just take one when you know two is coming? We're going to talk about this as kids who are impulsive versus reflective action. Ultimately, kids who are on the path to becoming present-oriented, that is, making this decision based on things in that situation. What does it look like, smell like, taste like? What do you feel? Versus future-oriented. Future-oriented means you imagine a scenario that doesn't exist right now of having two of the good things, okay? And so it always makes rational sense to do that. Present-oriented kids, present-oriented people fail to adequately discount the cost. So let me see I hope this is going to work. No, wait. Okay, great. So it's a study done at Stanford by Walter Mischel with 4-year-olds. I'm going to have a seat here. Okay. Sit right up. Okay. Now, I'm going to play a game with you, and I would like you to point to which one is the correct answer. Which one is happy most of the time, the shy one or the not shy one? Not shy one, correct. Which one has a brown nose? The shy puppet or the not shy puppet?
The not shy puppet.
Point him. Thank you. I'm sorry. Stop that. Which one is happy most of the time? The shy one or the not shy one?
Probably that.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I want to give you a prize for having done so well. Do you like marshmallows? You do. Well, here's a marshmallow for you. You can eat it now, but if you wait until I come back, you can have 2 of them. So you can eat this now, but I'm going to go outside for a minute. When I come back, you can have 2 marshmallows if you wait.
Okay, I'll wait.
Do you think you could wait? Okay, we'll see. I'll be back in a minute. See. Notice the body language is wonderful. Just totally looks away the whole time. Too hot. Little distraction. Hello. You waited. You waited for me. Okay, so now you know what's going to happen. You're going to get a double treat. I'm going to give you 2 of these lovely marshmallows. You want to eat them now or save them for later?
I'm going to eat them now.
Okay, well, go ahead. A little sticky.
I've had marshmallows before.
Well, some children waited, others just ate it. Right, you got it right. So I'm going to give you a prize. I'm going to give you a treat. And the treat is a delicious marshmallow. But if you wait, I have to go check my car. When I come back, if you wait, you can have 2 of them. You can have 1 now, or when I come back, you can have 2. Okay? Okay. Licking her lips. Just temptation, just capital T. Sorry. Hello, my dear. You ate the marshmallow. Was it delicious?
Yes.
Do you like marshmallows? Now, this kid is wonderful. You don't like marshmallows? Look at that face. Do you like chocolate? Yeah. Okay, well. I love chocolate. The treat you have won is a chocolate. But, if you wait till I come back, you could get 2. You could eat this now. I have to go check my car. And when I come back, if you wait, I'll give you 2 of them.
Okay.
So you can eat it now, but if you wait till I come back, you have 2. Okay? You think you could wait? Okay. So I will be back in a few minutes. So you can eat it now. 4 times. But if you wait, you're going to have 2 of them. Okay, I'll be back soon. I'm not out of the door. I love the little skull and crossbones. Like total boy. And he's just enjoying it, minding his own business, eating away. Hello, I'm back. Now listen carefully.
Good. I waited.
Oh, you ate it. You ate the chocolate. So clearly, he did not understand a very important connection between if-then. He didn't make the causal link that what he heard was, you can eat 1 now. If you wait, you can have 2. So he said, I waited. I didn't leave the room. So he ate 1 now, and now he wanted the other 2. And so what we've been arguing now is kids like that who grow up to be adults who are present-oriented never really learn if-then relations, never really learn causal sequence, never learn about probabilities. And therefore, they're on the path to do badly in school. Because life is all probabilities, causal relations, if-then. So what difference does it make, this little thing? Before the age of 4, no kids can wait because it does involve development of the various parts of the brain. At 4, about half kids wait and half don't. As you get older, more and more kids are able to delay gratification. Now, the interesting thing is Walter Mischel went back 14 years later, interviewed the kids, got their school records, interviewed the parents, and it turned out there were incredibly enormous differences between kids who gave into the temptation and kids who didn't. What I want to do is play you a little animation we've just made that outlines those changes and does it in a humorous way. So it repeats a little bit of that.
You may already be familiar with the famous marshmallow study conducted by my colleague, psychologist Walter Mischel, in which a group of 4-year-olds were given one marshmallow and told they were allowed to eat it immediately. They were told that if they could wait to eat the marshmallow after being left alone with it for a while, then they would be given an extra marshmallow to eat. Most eat the marshmallow as soon as they are left alone with it, but some other children are able to resist temptation. Those children who ate the marshmallow right away are considered to be oriented toward the present, while those who resisted temptation have an orientation toward the future. When the children were interviewed years later as 18-year-olds, there were amazing differences between the children who were able to delay gratification and those children who couldn't resist the immediate temptation. Scored 250 points higher on the SAT, overreacts to frustration, works well under pressure, indecisive, self-reliant and confident, prone to jealousy and envy. The marshmallow experiment is a classic study of how a person's ability to delay gratification, even at the age of 4, can predict many significant future outcomes. But what does this have to do with you? A lot. In my new book, The Time Paradox, you will learn how your own relationship to time plays a significant role in your personal happiness. Whether you're looking for a better understanding of the world at large, from religion to politics to business to national destinies, or want a deeper understanding of yourself, The Time Paradox teaches you how to recognize your own attitudes toward time and how your everyday decisions are influenced by your personal time orientation. And it will help you overcome the hidden mental biases that keep you too attached to the past, unhealthily obsessed with future goals, or too focused on immediate gratification. You can improve your personal success, happiness, and psychological health. The Time Paradox will show you how. It's only a matter of time, making time work for you.
I'm one of those present-oriented guys. So, it's not genetic. You're not born with a time frame. There are many, many things that influence it. That's why we're unaware of it. So culture has an effect, geography, climate. The closer you are to the equator, the more present-oriented you are. The more you're in an environment that doesn't change, you're never preparing for change. You're never preparing for the future. We'll talk about social class, educational level. To be future-oriented means you have to have trust in the promises that people make. That means you have to have a relatively stable family life, political life, economic life that you live in. If you're in a culture where the society where there's 1,000% inflation, as it is now in Zimbabwe, you don't save for a rainy day, because tomorrow your money's going to be worth even less. And that might be true with us here. Social models, your family, your friends, society, change over time. We'll see we all begin as present-oriented little beasts, and education moves us to be more past-oriented or present-oriented. Later, I'll describe with some research how these different influences create our time perspective bias. So our scale, what we've uncovered, John and I, is that there's 6 different time perspective factors. First is people who focus on the past, but we've discovered you could focus on the past in 2 ways. You could always bring up the good memories from the past, the good old times, or you bring up only the negatives in every situation. For others, they focus on the present. We think of the present hedonists, people who, sex, drugs, rock and roll, good friends. Other people are present-oriented. We call them fatalists. They say, it doesn't pay to plan. Nothing works out for me. My life is controlled by fate, by Allah, by the social workers. Future time perspective is, for some people, it's focus on goals, focus on goal. I would bet most of you, like us, are heavily oriented toward the future, and that's why you got your job here. There's some people whose life begins after death. And we call that transcendental future, that their whole life is really preparing for going to heaven and avoiding going to hell. And they are very different people than people whose life is focused on getting as much work done before I die. The thing we have not included in our research is what we call the holistic expansive present. It's really the Zen moment. It's really being in the now. It's Eckhart Tolle wrote a book about the now. And all Zen meditation is to be in the moment. That is to bring the past and present into the moment. We just don't have an easy way to measure that. In the Sanskrit, it says, yesterday is already a dream and tomorrow but a vision. But today, well lived, makes every yesterday a dream of happiness and every tomorrow a vision of hope. So let's quickly look through the scale that we developed. What are the kinds of items? And I'm going to give you, you don't have to buy the book. We have a website that has the scale. You can score it, read the articles we've written, although we'd like you to buy the book, of course. There are 56 items. And again, this is all empirical. That is, we developed it over 20 years. That you prepare a set of items, you give them out, people respond, and you do what's called a factor analysis. That statistically, you say, how do these items cluster? How do they hang together? And then you do a content analysis. You say, all the ones that hang together here, they're all about focusing on the future. This set is all focusing on negative things from the past. And so this scale measures the future, present hedonism and fatalism, past positive, negative. We have a separate scale that measures transcendental future, which we're not going to talk about today. Oh yeah, so the timeparadox.com. It's a website that John developed. The scale is there. You can score it. You get a profile of those 6 scores. And the key thing, it makes time for family, friends, and fun and indulgence as well as work. Okay, so past positive. It means you answer questions. It gives me pleasure to think about my past. I like family ritual traditions that are repeated regularly. There's a bunch of those items, and you endorse those. Yes, that's typical of me. Other people say, I've taken my share of abuse and rejection in the past. Painful past experience keep being replayed in my mind. So for some people, the past is nostalgia. It's all the good things, and these are people who, in fact, keep old photos, keep old books, it's the mothers who keep your report cards for, forever. It's the joy of family rituals, holiday feasts. In most cultures that are pre-literate, there's always a storyteller, and the storyteller's job is to keep the past alive. It's almost always stories about the ancestors that are glorified, because the purpose is you want the kids to take the place of their parents and grandparents and not leave the community. So if you look at these stories, they're all stories that reify the past. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who had bad experiences in the past, or people who misremember the past in negative ways. And the terrible thing is, many of these people get trapped in a cycle of negativity called rumination. All clinical depression is people who are past negative, who ruminate, who can't help it. No matter what they're doing, the terrible thing comes up, and they can be in a situation otherwise they're having fun, and that negative past gets replayed. Present hedonism. I do things impulsively. I try to live my life as fully as possible, one day at a time. Present fatalist answer, a present fatalist answer, fate determines much of my life. Since whatever I do will be, it doesn't really matter what I do. So that's like a giving up orientation. So I do things impulsively, make a decision on the spur of the moment. So for present hedonists, there's no to-do list. They believe in gambling. Even Stanford students who are present-oriented don't wear wristwatches. But we all start life as hedonists, at the breast or at the bottle. We live for the moment. And in many cultures, we indulge kids. We say, now you can play. Until somebody says, what are you going to do when you grow up? And Uncle Charlie, and then it's over. But play means you're not doing it to get strong. You're not doing it to learn strategies of leadership. You're doing it because it's fun. The moment it stops becoming fun, gets boring, you stop. The problem is, as you can see in this picture, here's this kid's friends saying, jump, jump, and he jumps. And just below him is this huge rock. If he doesn't jump far enough, he gets a concussion. He gets killed, whatever. So that the problem with being present-oriented is your behavior is never influenced by imagined future consequences. It's only influenced by the immediate now, the immediate situation. One of the good things about being present hedonist, especially if you lived in Marin in the 60s, is it was sensuality blended with intellectuality. And one of the terrible things about AIDS is it made this a no-no. The great thing about being present-oriented hedonist is friends are your most important asset. You spend time making friends, keeping friends. People love to be with you. They're the only people you should invite to your parties because they're never worried about tomorrow. They're never checking their watch. They don't have to-do lists. Wherever they are, that's where they want to be. And on the other hand, video game excitement traps adolescent boys in the present moment. And now they don't have to go to an arcade. They just have it on their laptop. I have students who play video games 12 hours a day on Saturday. They get up, they start, they miss breakfast, they miss lunch, they miss getting term papers done because they become obsessed with the moment. Time stops in a gambling casino. Any of you have been to any casino, you know what? There's no clocks, there's no day or night, time ceases to exist. Present-oriented people are also impulsive and emotional, just like you saw those little kids. So here's a woman, fairly well in New York. She puts money in the chiclet machine. She starts kicking the machine. That you act on impulse. You don't say, "Gee, it'll look stupid. Here's somebody looking at you. You know, you're well dressed. And it's 5 cents, so you lost 5." No, they act on impulse. So a new book, Drugs, Rock and Roll, and the subtitle is "Imagine a Life with No Fear of Consequences." In one way, that's a kind of fantasy. Wouldn't it be nice if you could imagine life with no fear of consequence? But if you actively imagine that, then you're going to lead a life full of risk, and what we're going to argue later is full of addiction. So here's a present hedonistic child with a present fatalistic mother. Poor people in New York become present fatalistic because it's a realistic orientation. If you are poor in any city in the world, in fact, your life is controlled by things outside of your orbit of dominance. You're the last to be hired, the first to be fired. And essentially, most of your planning doesn't lead to anything constructive. The problem is once you internalize that orientation, you're doomed to poverty. And the problem is once you transfer that orientation to your kids, they are doomed. Because then you say, it doesn't pay to get educated. You know, it doesn't mean anything. And the terrible thing for me about corruption, which is one of the 10 major problems throughout the world, according to the UN, corruption breeds cynicism, that it doesn't matter what you know, it only matters who you know. I do lots of work in Italy and Sicily especially, and the whole country is now cynical that nothing you do makes a difference because ultimately the mafia, the police, the army will take the fair share. So for the future-oriented, I believe a person's day should be planned ahead each morning. Meeting tomorrow's deadlines, doing other necessary work comes before tonight's work. I'm able to resist temptation when others be done. I'm sure everybody in this room is going to check 3, 4, or 5 on a 5-point scale. So there they have the to-do list. Time is weighing out. So what are the temptations? Sex. I mean, you know, here's this guy. There's an ad, a sexist ad in Flight magazine. You can't mix business with pleasure. So here's Eve trying to tempt Adam one more time. And the question is he going to give in to the marshmallow pleasure? Is he going to go to work? Well, he's got the attaché case. He's going to go to work. I took this picture in the cemetery in the Kremlin in Moscow. Here's a guy on the phone. This is a huge marble statue, and his family and friends wanted to identify him for life. Here's a guy making one last call, one last business connection. Probably, hey, Jesus, operator, give me Jesus on the line. I got this big sale coming up. So you get 5 scores for each of those factors. And then what we do is we relate them to many other psychological factors. We pick people who are high or low. We actually observe them. We put them in experiments, and I'll show you that very quickly. What I'm going to show you is a set of correlation coefficients. They're identified statistic as R. It's simply the index of association between any 2 variables. How much does A go with B? And they can go from +1 through 0 to -1. 0 means there's no connection. +1 means every instance of A is matched by an exact instance of B. If it's minus, it's exactly the opposite. Every high score is matched with a low score. In psychology, most relationships are in the order of 0.3 or 0.4. And that's important because what I'm going to show you is, for the first time, data which is astoundingly stronger than anything psychologists have seen before. So here's the people who score high on future, and we give them a whole bunch of scales. This is on 205 college students, College of San Mateo. The criterion variable connected with future orientation is conscientiousness, 0.70. I'm going to talk later about conscientiousness has just been shown to be linked to longevity. People who are conscientious, like you, live longer. And we're going to tell you what the secret is in a minute. These are people who prefer consistency, 0.6. They have control over their ego. They have high energy. They have control of their impulse. But what is it they don't have? They don't have sensation seeking. They're low on aggression, low on depression. Okay? So these are people who are reliable, trustworthy. You want to have some of those in your business, but not too many. Past positive, a totally different profile. These are people who are happy, they have positive self-esteem, they're friendly, they have moderate energy, but they're very low. They're not anxious, they're not depressed, they're not aggressive. The present hedonists, they're a world apart. Novelty seeking and sensation seeking, again, 0.7, these are huge. It's like people who are high in this, they're going to be seeking sensation, seeking novelty. High energy, but high aggression, high creativity. The ego is under control, -75. That means they're not, that's that woman. Something irritates you, push goes to shove. They don't prefer consistency. Low on conscientiousness, low on emotional stability. The two factors that are predictors not only of risk, but are clinically significant that clinical psychologists have not yet noticed. Now, if you're a high present fatalist, you score 50 on aggression, anxiety, and depression. That's a deadly triad. Aggression, depression, and concern for the future. -70. Who gives a shit? Negative self-esteem, negative conscientiousness, negative energy, negative emotional stability, and they're not very happy. Same thing as the people who bring the negative stuff from the past to the present. Look at their profile. Almost the same as present fatalist. High on anxiety, high on depression, high on aggression, and low. Low self-esteem, low emotional stability, low impulse control, they're not happy, and low energy. So here are 5 different kinds of people in very fundamental ways. But the second paradox is, any of those in the extreme has some good qualities, but they're outweighed by the negatives. Let me see. So that's the paradox. So what's great about being past-oriented, you're happy, you have high self-esteem. These are all the patriots. These are the family value people. This is gratitude, wisdom. This is where wisdom comes from. They believe in family values. And they have a sense of personal identity over time that future-oriented people don't have. Because if you're past-oriented, your life is from here to your family, to your extended family. What's great about being present hedonists, they belong to all groups, high affiliates. They take joy in life. They're sensual. They have a lot of sex, a lot of energy, a lot of improvisation. This is where the jazz musicians come from rather than classical. And what's important for Google and other places, these are the people who explore novelty. You want to have some of those people. You're going to put up with some of the other stuff because these are people who are going to be the innovators. Okay? They're going to improvise and innovate if you can keep them nailed to the desk. What's great about being future, these are the high achievers. They have a high sense of self-efficacy. They have a health focus. You're going to see that's one of the reasons that they live longer. They engage in probability thinking, cost-benefit analysis. They have positive expectancies and hope for change. Half of all the people who start rehabilitation of any physical problem never finish. I've had 7 different operations, and what I can tell you is all physical therapy makes it worse initially. It hurts more. If you have carpal tunnel, the simple exercise is you got to walk up the wall. Going from here to here shoots pain. Why should I do it? And so people quit. The people who quit are present-oriented. We think, there's no present and past-oriented. If you're future-oriented, you have in your mind the scenario of someday I'm going to reach up here. Once I do, I'll be fine. If you do not go through the exercise, you develop scar tissue, which never heals. And there are people who it's worse. You can never lift your arm again above this thing. So what that means is, with this information, it says, if you are a physical therapist, you want to give them the test, and you know if somebody is present-oriented or past-oriented, you have to give them special treatment, because you know they're going to quit. If you're future-oriented, you say, here's the game plan. Go play. Call me when it's all over. What's bad about the past? This is where trauma is. These are the people who feel guilt. Present-oriented people, future-oriented people don't feel guilt in the same way. This is where depression is, but these are the people who retaliate. These are people who want revenge. These are people who resist change. They're stuck in the past. Many of the wars throughout the world are fought because your great-great-grandfather in 1727 attacked my great-great-grandfather and was still living out this blood thing. And that for those societies, they live in the past, and the past is always brought into the present. What's wrong with being present hedonist? You are subject to all addictions. All addictions initially are great. Whatever it is, it feels good. But then you die, okay, or you get sick. They take risky actions. We'll see, I'll present data. They go prone to violence and anger. They love to gamble. And if you gamble, you always end up losing. The house always wins. The other thing is they run up huge credit card debts because you buy now and assume you're going to pay later. I will bet lots of the people in the subprime mortgage, these are the people who said, yeah, I'll take 3%. Somehow, when the time comes around, I'll have more money. And they believe you make gains by luck, not by effort. Lastly, what's wrong with being future-oriented? They have a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry. They work so hard, they become socially isolated. I'm going to present data that John and I collected. They're excessively high in competitiveness. And for men, at least, it promotes sexual impotence. What do you mean sexual? Because everything in their life is a performance. So sex is a performance. Rather than, birds do it, bees do it, it's the most natural thing. No, it's a performance. So the idea is, A, am I going to get it up? Am I going to get a score? A, B, am I going to keep it up? Get another score. Am I going to have a cosmic orgasm? So you're waiting for the woman to give you a score. Yes, okay, you got a B plus. And once you think about sex, it destroys the erection and it's over for you, even with Viagra. So let's bring it up to date. I want to argue the main problem with John McCain is he's stuck in the past regarding the Iraq War. If you heard his debate, he focuses on the failure to win the war in Iraq. He focuses on his suffering as a prisoner. So here's this old warrior who says, I want to bring the boys home, just as Obama does, but I want to bring them home after we win the war. Okay? That's a statement. He's an old warrior who doesn't recognize that the new terrorism conflict is an asymmetrical war. Symmetrical is this nation against this nation. Asymmetrical, which is what terrorism is about a network of individuals versus a state. The concept of winning the war no longer makes sense because there is no one to surrender. You can't win a war unless somebody surrenders. There's no one to surrender in Iraq. Okay? You can say, well, we won because we reduced the fatalities, or we won because things are pretty much under control. But in fact, in terms of understanding the nature of war and winning and losing a war, there is no one to surrender because there's no nation state. And so that's one of the big problems, that if he maintains that orientation and becomes president, we will be there for years and years and years, if that's his criteria for when we leave. So, very quickly, we did lots of research. I'm going to present a little bit. Health in Italian women, conservation and sustainability research in Brazil and Mexico, college grades, solving mazes, taking risk-taking, smoking and drugs, and creativity. So quickly, women in Rome were much more likely to visit a breast cancer clinic for free checkups, but only if they were future-oriented. We said the women who were present-oriented didn't do it, even though it was free and available and announced. In two separate studies in Brazil and Mexico were more likely to support efforts at environmental sustainability. In Mexico, the whole program on water conservation. I mean, not leaving the water running at the sink, not leaving the water running while you're brushing your teeth. And they were only the future-oriented people who followed these kinds of programs. It turns out there are 24 translations, as of this morning, of our scale around the world. I actually met in Berlin with a dozen young researchers who are using this scale, in every case coming up with significant results. One of the things that's interesting, for example, in Costa Rica, there's no difference between past positive and past negative. People think about the past, and they don't differentiate past positive. They don't make that affective change. In Sweden, we just discovered that there's a negative future, that the negative future is worrying. that things won't work out the way you plan. So this research now is embellishing and broadening our conception. In my class at Stanford, big class, we give out the scale, we grade kids objectively. Turns out the lowest grades, and amazing, these are Stanford students who I think probably are smarter, because if they're still present-oriented and they're still going through Stanford, they must be basically smarter, but they get lowest grades. Present hedonists get low average. The highest grades, of course, are always the future-oriented. Does time perspective predict cognitive effectiveness in solving mazes? So we're going to have present-oriented students versus future-oriented students. Each are going to try to solve some mazes. And we have half men and half women, and they have to solve mazes in a certain time. Mazes like this, mazes like this. And what happens is, if you are future-oriented, 90% of the time you solve the maze. If you're present-oriented, the same mazes, only 60% you solve. That's a 30% difference. That's a huge effect. And the only difference is the more present versus future-oriented. Well, you could argue that maybe future-oriented people have more practice. Maybe they play puzzles in the game. Maybe that's what you do if you're future-oriented. So how are you going to correct for that? Well, why don't we take future-oriented people and hypnotize them and make them present-oriented? That is, tell them that the past and present, the past and future are distant and insignificant, and the present is expanding. So that means they have the same background, the same experience, only now, when they're solving the maze, they're in the mental set of being present-oriented. And we did that at Berkeley. We hypnotized half of the futures to make them into present. What you get is the same exact results as Stanford. 30% failed to solve the maze if they were in this expanded present. Well, again, Stanford students are a little brighter, so so it doesn't matter whether you're future or present, you're still going to do better. Who smokes, takes drugs, drinks alcohol? We did an enormous study at Stanford at Cornell with a sample of 1,272, and we were looking at alcohol use and alcohol use is all kinds of things. Binge drinking, how much alcohol you drink per day, per week, per weekend, and same thing with risky driving, a whole set of things, including not wearing seatbelts, racing, etc. Stanford males, if you're present-oriented, score of 50. That's really highly significant. And it correlates with risky driving. If you're future-oriented, the scale's a minus. It turns out Cornell is identical. Doesn't matter, it's on the East Coast. 55 compared to 50, 25 to 40. And again, if you're future-oriented, it's minus. What about women? In general, all the research says women are different than men when it comes to drinking. Not when you isolate present hedonistic women. No different than men. At Stanford, if you're a present hedonistic woman, the correlation with alcohol use is 0.55, higher than men. The correlation with risky driving is 0.3. At Cornell, it's the same, 50 and 55, 35 and 25. So in general, if you're future-oriented, you don't do things, you don't take risks, you don't overdrink alcohol, you don't overtake drugs. And if you're present hedonistic, it doesn't matter if you're male or female, it doesn't matter if you're on the East Coast or West Coast, you put yourself at risk. Well, let's look at people who put themselves at risk. We did a study of heroin addicts, 34, and controls, people who were also in the same hospital, but not for drug addiction problem. We gave them our scale. So the present hedonists, the heroin addicts were significantly higher than the controls. They were much higher, look at on present fatalistic, lower on future, and no difference on the past. And these results are significant at the 0.01 level. That means this result will happen only once in 100 times by chance. That means you can trust that it's probably a real difference. Guess who takes risks? So here's now we go to high school kids in, I think it was San Jose, 122 high school kids, all of whom drive. Taking risks driving, driving while drunk, racing, wearing seatbelts. If you're present-oriented, look, you take risk driving, you drive when drunk, driving under the influence. You know what that means. You race and negative wearing seatbelts. If you're future-oriented, you don't drive, take risks. I mean, you don't take risk driving, you don't drive while drunk, you don't race, and you wear seatbelts. There's also a difference in just putting yourself into general arousal settings. So present-oriented kids, they watch R-rated movies, they watch X-rated movies, They're likely to have sex. They watch MTV. They take risks driving, and they do skateboard tricks. And if you and if you're future-oriented, it's always negative. So it's different worlds. It's not slight different. It's different worlds. So these kids are sitting side by side in class. They could even be in the same family, but they're carrying around totally different mentalities. So I said all addictions are addictions of present orientation: gambling, food, sex, drugs, because initially the first hit, the first bite, the first romance feels good. That's the problem in all of our propaganda. Trying to make it say it's terrible. It's terrible the second, third, fourth, fifth time, because then you become addicted, psychologically or physically addicted. So the temptation paradigm is you get immediate pleasure. That's certain. There's no question about it. Eating that second, pizza, the second strawberry shortcake, whatever it is, taking Quaaludes or marijuana, it feels good. Having sex feels good. But then, over time, there are negative consequences. You could have a baby, you could have sexually transmitted disease, you can become obese, you could lose all your money. But the pleasure in the present is certain and guaranteed. The future is probable. Not everybody who smokes gets cancer. Not everybody has unprotected sex gets a baby or gets AIDS. And the problem is, if you're future-oriented, you never think about negative consequences. Even though we give you a test, this is what happens. The future never feeds back to change your behavior. And that's a significant problem when we want to change those kids' behavior. So the main program our government sponsors for $560 million a year, they've been doing it for 10 years, is something that doesn't work at all. It's called Dare to Say No to Drugs. This is thank you, Nancy Reagan. And what it is if cops, started in LA, cops come into a classroom, they role play with kids. They teach kids how to say no to drugs. And you perform in front of the class this little scenario. And people say, does it work? Yeah, the kids love it. They waste an hour every week. The teachers love it. They don't have to prepare. The parents love it. Something is happening. And the cops love it. They make extra money. And they say, no. Does it change the behavior? Say, we never asked that question. 7 studies were done, and a meta-analysis of 7, comparing kids who were in the program for a year versus kids who weren't. So what is the difference? Zero. No difference. No effect at all. How could that be? We're spending $560 million. The problem is that the programs do not recognize that the special set of the present-oriented kids. The programs work for future-oriented kids. They learn to say no to drugs. Just as the data you showed, the present-oriented kids, it doesn't work. Because the role play in front of the class does not generalize to being back of the car, does not generalize to a rock concert, it does not generalize to a party. These kids are situationally specific in their minds. The message they learn in the class does not transfer. And what's wrong with all of our advertising campaign against addiction? They focus on aversive future consequences that work for future-oriented kids, but never for present-oriented kids, because that's a target, because they never think about future consequences. And all these programs focus on inner dispositional determinants, action, willpower, character. And the whole issue is, it's the situation, stupid. It's the situation these kids are drawn into, drift into, in the neighborhood, in the groups. That's what you have to change. So the programs are written by future-oriented people in ad agencies, but they don't realize it's really effective for other future-oriented people, but that's not the target audience. So we have to fundamentally change our educational propaganda of this kind. So street kids in the Bronx, where I grew up in New York City, they live in a present hedonistic world where there are no consequences. You know if you use a gun, you go to jail. If you rob a store, you always carry a gun in case there's a problem. If you're present hedonistic, you never imagine getting caught. So you're a stupid robber because you don't imagine getting caught. You don't have a safe getaway plan. I mentioned the high correlation between conscientiousness and future orientation. An article just came out last week in Health Psychology by Friedman. He's the guy who made type A popular. And what they show is a meta-analysis of 20 samples of almost 9,000 people in many different countries show that conscientious people live significantly longer. If you're conscientious, you're going to live longer. So their thing just said, here's this relationship. And I've been writing to him saying, you know what? It works through being future-oriented, because future orientation is correlated to 70. And the data I just showed you said it's not mystical, it's special health behaviors. So the future-oriented kids, people, they get medical and dental checkups regularly. They eat health foods, they exercise, they wear seatbelts. And they avoid negative things like risky behavior, bikes and car risks, sensation seeking, unsafe sex, alcohol and drugs, arguments and fights. So now we know here is this link between conscientiousness and living longer. That's the ultimate outcome. We want people to live longer. But it's mediated by different health behaviors, avoiding the negative ones and seeking or adding into your life more of the positive ones. Is being present-oriented good for anything? We did a study where we got future-oriented versus present-oriented kids, and we told them that we wanted them to draw something, paint something. And for some, we said, focus on the task. Get involved in the process. For others, we said, focus on the product. We're going to have it evaluated by art students at Stanford. So they draw or paint flowers. We had men and women. Again, half present, half future. And the manipulation was focus on the process, focus on the product. And what we're saying is, obviously, if you're present-oriented, you always focus on the process. And if you're future-oriented, you always focus on the product. So this is the kind of thing they did. Here's a kid who was future product-oriented, nicely arranged, perfectly spaced. I did the whole thing with charcoal and then started filling it in. Here's a kid future process, again, really nice. So then here's the present hedonist. Same picture. I mean, same flowers that they're painting. It's more and more abstract. So here's a present who was in the product condition. He didn't like it. So he's drawing the flower. It says flower power. You know, he's got the fist. Death to the cap. So this is consumerism. That is making him focus on a product. That's not what he wants to do. So essentially, we have half our present, half our future. The focus is on the product or the process. Now we're going to measure two things: the technical merit of the drawing, the spacing, the use of the colors, and the creativity. And we're having both of those judged by graduate students in the art department at Stanford. And what you get is the highest technical merit is those who are future-oriented, focused on the product. They get it right. But who are the ones who are most creative? It's the present-oriented, creativity focused on the process. So here's one place, at least, where present-oriented kids, people, rise to the occasion, that they are more likely to take something and be able to envision it in a totally different way. Not stick to the model, not try to reproduce it in a really nice way, because they don't really care about who's judging it. So that's where improvisation comes in. That's why I keep saying that although we tend to dismiss these kinds of people in business, I think they are critical for a business that's in a process of innovation. So what's the best thing to do? John and I, after years of thinking about this, it's really critical to develop what we call optimal temporal balance, to develop the mental flexibility to shift time perspectives fluidly, depending on the demands of the situation, allowing one time zone to rise up and the others to recede. And we will guarantee you will live longer, more fulfilling lives, and be more successful. You can balance your time perspective. And that means that the optimal profile is moderately high on past, positive, and future, and moderate on present hedonism. All programs on time management are all the same, regardless of the name. They want to get future-oriented people and make you more efficient to get you to do more work. No, we say you're doing too much work. We're all doing too much work. We have to balance out our work with more self-indulgence, with more hedonism. What is always bad is past negative and present fatalism. And we talk about in the book how to get less of these and more of the other. So what you want is the past gives you roots to connect to your identity, to your family, to be grounded. The future gives you wings to soar to new destinations, to take new challenges. And what the present does, it gives you the energy to do the work, to explore new people, new places, yourself, and sensuality. Last thing before I introduce John is, we did a study in USA Today last month, August 5th. USA Today had done a study 20 years ago on the time crunch, the pressure Americans feel, and we got them to update it. We added some of our measures in. And the results, it's a sample of 2,000. 70% of Americans said, I think of my life as busy or very busy. 50% said, it's busier this year than last year. 60% said, what gets me angry is waiting. Waiting is an upset, waiting for late traffic, slow services, late people. Now, 30% get angry because the PC takes so long to start up and the web pages take so long to download. But here's the key. 45% of people say, I sacrifice my friends, 30% say I sacrifice my family, and 57% say I sacrifice sleep to get my work done. And so we say, and 90% say, I wish I had more time to be with family and friends. So we tell them, suppose we gave you an extra day, how would you spend it? Only 9% said I'd spend it with friends, 31% with family, 25% had fun, mostly said I get more work done. The last thing of importance to you is, in 1989, 60% of Americans said we have regular family dinners. That number has plummeted to 20%. Only 20% of Americans say we have regular family dinners. Where's all that family values we hear about, okay? What this tells us is our society is now time-driven and less socially focused. Nobody bowls anymore. There are no group activities. Anything that's not work-oriented. And the problem now with technology is the dividing line between work and home is vanished. We take our work home, we bring our work from home to work, but what we're sacrificing is friends, family, and personal fun. I think one last thing I wanted to say. So time makes you better only when you make time work for you, to make time for family, friends, and fun. And you make time. That is, you make a conscious decision. I'm going to call my brother. Conscious decision, I'm going to get a massage when I finish this thing. Conscious decision, I'm going to take an hour out and watch a Netflix thing. Or I'm going to read a book. So what is the time perspective? Religion. Protestants are more future-oriented than Catholics from the Calvinist Reformation. Education. More education, the more future-oriented you are. Lower social class are more present-oriented. Middle class are more future-oriented. It all came from the Calvinist Revolution, which essentially said you know you're destined to go to heaven or hell depending on your earthly success. So you say, all I got to do is work my ass off, and then it'll be a sign that I'm going to go to heaven. And so that started the Puritan ethic, the Protestant Revolution. So in every country in the world, Protestants are not only more future-oriented, but those countries have a higher gross national product. Time is money, and Einstein discovers, actually, the formula that time really is money. And so the business of time and business go hand in hand. Economists have been studying discount functions, hyperbolic discount functions, which is really about not adequately discounting the future if you're more focused on the present. The last thing I want to say before introducing John is our analysis of part of the complex current Wall Street meltdown is it's caused by motivated collective greed. And what greed does, it transforms usually wise, future-oriented businessmen and managers, businesswomen, who ordinarily would say we need reserves, we have to be cautious about loans and mortgage that are not adequately supported. And it transforms them into short-term, present-focused, quick gains, failure to discount future costs against immediate taste of that marshmallow. They become like those little kids. Everybody's making money, you got to make money. It's actually a modern example of what's known as the commons dilemma. The commons dilemma is you have a grazing field and you have five farmers, and they all want the cows to graze as much as they can, or the sheep. And if they all graze all the time, they eliminate the resource. This happened in Monterey, where they fished out every sardine in the sea. And they knew it was coming, and had all these fishermen are fishing every day, loading up their boats, and people saying, hey, wait, no, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep doing this. People were telling Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, you can't keep doing this. You can't keep making loans without reserve. And what greed does, it just blinds you, it transforms you to be these prudent, future-oriented people making wise decisions about cost-benefit analysis into those little kids saying, I'm going to take my marshmallow now. So with that, I want to have John take the next few minutes to talk about how time perspectives and business are intimately linked.
So I think what we'll do, Phil, is in respect for people's time, we had Phil speak first because he's only going to be here one day, and I'm here every day. I can talk to you separately. So what I think we should do is take some questions now, and I'll set up a separate tech talk that really deals with how all of what Phil talks about applies to the business world and what we do here at Google. I think it really does. I think it's interesting. I'm excited about it, but just out of respect for you, you're already a couple of minutes late. Let's just move directly into questions, and we'll go from there.
Okay.
All right, we got the mic up front, and I got one here.
Okay. While you're coming up, we want to argue that some of life's puzzles that you deal with will be solved by understanding how time perspective works for you. And now that you know it, are you willing to acknowledge your time zone, willing to take the test, see where you fit, and sort out trying to change the negative parts of your time profile? Yes.
In the maze experiment, what happened when you hypnotized the presenters?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
In the maze experiment, what happened when you try to hypnotize the present-oriented people to make them future-oriented?
Essentially, under hypnosis, what you do is you get people who are hypnotizable, and about a quarter of the population are. And after they learn how to relax, you simply say, think about time in your life, and now the past and the future are becoming distant and insignificant, remote. And the present is expanding. The present is expanding to fill up your mind and body. We had used that procedure in other research. And it works. And before we put them in the experiment, we tested in other ways to see that it changes the way they use language. They're more likely to use present tense verbs in describing a story than future tense verbs. And when you put them in a study, you say, here's a maze. You say, begin. If you're future-oriented, you don't begin, you look. You look at the goal, you look at the cul-de-sac, you look at the beginning, and you visually explore the maze. If you're present-oriented, you say, begin, they go. They go, and they get stuck in the cul-de-sac, and they get irritated, and they go back and forth, and then many times they just quit.
Yes, the other way around.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was much more interested. You can always make something be worse. I'd be very surprised if you didn't try the other direction. Make the present-oriented people being future-oriented.
Yeah, that's hard to do. You know why? Because we all know what it means to be present-oriented as children. If you have never been future-oriented, you don't have the mental equipment to think in probabilistic terms. You don't have the mental equipment to think in cause and effect. No, we haven't done that. It's worth a try. Our prediction is that it's not going to work in that direction. That present-oriented people, you can't just say be future-oriented, and they will do it. That it takes training and practice.
I think that would be similar to trying to hypnotize somebody to be smarter. I think it'd be a challenge to get people's IQs to increase.
Yeah, it's easy to get people to be dumber. You say, be dumber. We know how to be dumb. We don't know how to be smart.
Yeah, but that brings the question of what really happened. I'm not trying to say that hypnotism isn't real, but the situation you're aware of, of course, more than I am, that it's very problematic.
Yeah. No, it's worth doing. I'm saying, yes, it's a good idea. We should have done it both ways. We were just predicting that it's less likely to work only because if you're present-oriented, it's harder to imagine what it means to be future-oriented, and it's harder to transform that imagination into practice. And if the other way around, it's relatively easy if you're future-oriented now. As kids, we were present-oriented. We know what it is to grab for the marshmallow, because we did that at some time. Yes?
I really appreciate what you're saying about having training and the learning experience be diverse for these different types of people, and you were giving Dare was your example. So what might a training environment or the experience look like that would better speak and better work for a present-minded person? For the present hedonistic person?
Well, John has actually done that. He took juvenile delinquents, kids who lived in a total present, and trained them to begin to plan an hour ahead, a day ahead, a week ahead.
We taught them a technique called mental simulation, which is what a lot of athletes use before shooting a free throw or taking it at bat, where they imagine all of the steps that they need to go through to actually succeeding. They're not imagining just succeeding, they're imagining the steps and the preparation that they need to go through. And we did this in San Mateo with community schools. These are stereotypically juvenile delinquents, and we taught them mental simulation strategies. And I went in every day for 2 weeks, and we had them mentally simulate achieving a goal at different distance into the future. We started with a goal that they could achieve the next day, and then we extended it at the end of the study until 5 years in the future. And what we found is over the course of the 2 weeks, their future orientation became much more concrete and pragmatic. They went from wanting to be NBA stars and doctors and lawyers to getting their GED or going back to their regular high school and do things that were much more tangible. There's actually a terrific study. It's one of the first things I did at Stanford. And there was a student who said that, this technique is terrific. I debriefed them at the end. He said, I did something that I'd never done before, and that's setting a goal and actually having it come true. Another student said that, this really was really cool. It helped me achieve my most important goal, which was staying out of jail. So for these kids, it was something that really they hadn't learned already. And through mental simulation-like strategies, structured daydreaming, I think we can make people who are more present hedonistic more susceptible to the traditional attitude change messages.
Yeah. So, but the more general issues, we think all of these are learned, and therefore they can all be modified. But with careful planning, again, I think it's a kind of Google activity. I mean, that it's one thing to do it one-on-one. I think some of this can be actually imported into web programs, where if you can get the kids on the program, you can systematically, because then you could reward them, for each step focusing on the future.
And I think we actually have time for one more question. Dr. Zimbardo and Boyd will be available after the talk as well.
We're also giving away books, assigning books?
Indeed, we're signing books too.
Okay, yes.
So it seems like people's idea of time are pretty consistent from when they're younger to when they're older. Would you say that people's idea of time is learned, or is it maybe more of kind of possibly, does it start when you're born, and have you looked at possible like neurological correlations with this, like how it all?
Yeah, no, we have not done any neurological studies, but our argument is that it's really learned. It's learned, as all those things I said, depending on the culture you grow up in, depending on the financial, economic, legal stability of your country. It focuses if you live near the equator or not. That I'm saying all of those things push people in one direction or another. We're arguing that everybody is born present hedonistic. Namely, you survive by seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. And over time, some people stay there. What I argued is what education does in every case, it tries to get you to be more future-oriented. All education is about delaying gratification. Nothing in education is immediate payoff. It's always, if you do this and this, then next week, next month, next year, 4 years from now, there'll be a payoff. But what we also found, our colleague Laura Carstensen from Stanford shows that among older people, they kind of slip back into a kind of present orientation. That is, they want fewer, closer friends. If you give them an opportunity to spend time with a really interesting celebrity or with a best friend, they pick best friend. At a younger age, you want to be with the interesting celebrity. So as you get older, where you realize my time is finite, I want to select it so I get the most emotional affect out of it. So it's not I want to meet new people, get new ideas. I want to be with old friends, old family. And so that's a unique phase that she says elderly people go through, is that she calls selectively optimize their social life. Fewer, more intense relationships. When you're younger, we want to be on Facebook, we want to be on YouTube, we want everybody in the world to know us and be linked with everybody. So no, we want to narrow it down to who's my best friends, who's my best family.
All right, well, thank you very much. That was an outstanding talk.
Thank you, I love being here. Thank you.